Hello class, we're about to start section R3.7, solving quadratic equations with the square root method. We already know one way to solve a quadratic equation is by factoring. Now, we will use this method to solve x squared minus 16 equals 0. Now, we know this is the difference of two squares, so we know we will have our two parentheses. One will have a plus in it, the other will have a subtraction sign in it. So we would take the square root of x squared, which is x, and the square root of 16, which is 4. So now we would set both parentheses equal to 0, and we would have x plus 4 equals 0, and x minus 4 equals 0. And then we would solve. We would subtract 4 on both sides, and we would have x is equal to a negative 4. And here we would add 4 to both sides, and we would have x is equal to 4. So our final answer would be x is negative 4 or x is positive 4. Hey class, we have a couple other things here we need to read. Solving a quadratic equation with the square root method, and you can read that at your leisure. So now we want to go down here to example 1. We have 5x squared minus 3 equals 4. So we should add 3 to both sides, and we will have 5x squared is equal to 7. Now, we have to get x squared by itself. So we would divide each side by 5, and we will have x squared is equal to 7/5. Now we want to get x by itself, so we would take the square root of x squared, or the square root on both sides. So we have the square root of x squared is equal to the square root of 7/5. So this will give us x, and it will be equal to, now since we took the square root of 7/5, we know our answer would be plus or minus the square root of 7 over the square root of 5. And then we need to get rid of the square root of 5 out of the denominator. So we will multiply the numerator and denominator by the square root of 5. So now, we would take the square root of 7. So we have plus or minus square root of 7 times square root of 5, to give us the square root of 35. And then the square root of 5 times the square root of 5, we know would give us positive 5. And that is our final answer. Now we come up here to B. We have 5x minus 4 in parentheses squared equals 36. So we would take the square root of both sides. So the square root of parentheses 5x minus 4 squared will leave us 5x minus 4. And it's equal to plus or minus the square root of 36, we know is 6. So it's positive or negative 6. So we will add 4 to both sides, and we will have 5x is equal to 4 plus or minus 6. So now what we would do is this here. We can have 5x is equal to 4 plus 6 is 10, and then we can have 5x is equal to 4 minus 6 is negative 2. And then we can solve. We divide each side by 5 here, and x is equal to 2. We divide each side by 5 over here, and x is equal to a negative 2/5. So we know our answer is 2 or a negative 2/5. And that is our final answer. Now we scroll down here to the next problem. We have example 2 on page 154. It says solve the following using the square root method. Now we know we need to get n by itself here. So we need to divide each side by 9. And we will have n squared is equal to 5/9. Now, we will have to take the square root of both sides because we're trying to get n by itself. So the square root of n squared is n. And the square root of 5/9 will give us positive or negative square root of 5 over 9. Now, we can break this square root up. So we have plus or minus the square root of 5 over the square root of 9. Now we know the square root of 9 is 3. So we have n is plus or minus the square root of 5 all over 3. And that is our final answer. Now we come here to B. Now with B, we must add 8 on both sides first. So we have 4x plus 7 in parentheses squared is equal to 28. Now we need to get rid of the square off of this parenthesis. So we'll take the square root of both sides. And we would be left with 4x plus 7 is equal to positive or negative square root of 28. Now, this is what we would do next here. We would actually, okay class, I notice here I made a slight little error here. I notice now that this was a negative 20 instead of a positive 20. So we need to correct this. You could erase this in your course pack. So actually negative 20 plus 8 would give us a negative 12. And then we would have the square root of negative 12. That would give us plus or minus. And we know we always take the I out first. So it'll be I times the square root of 12. So now we will have 4x plus 7 is equal to plus or minus. Now, with this square root of 12, we know we have a perfect square in 12 with 4. So we'll factor out the square root of 4. So we will have 4x plus 7 is equal to plus or minus. Now the square root of 4 is 2, and 2 times I is 2I times the square root of 3. Now we will subtract 7 on both sides. So we will have 4x is equal to negative 7 plus or minus 2I square root 3. Now, the last thing here is we have this 4. We divide each side by 4. And we will have x is equal to negative 7 plus or minus 2I square root 3 all over 4. And this is our final answer. Now, we come down here to C. Now, C, we have 9 times the parenthesis x minus 7/3 squares equals 5. So we will have to divide both sides by 9. And we will have in parentheses x minus 7/3 squared equals 5/9. Now we will take the square root of both sides. And we will have x minus 7/3 is equal to plus or minus. This will end up being the square root of 5 over 3. Because we know the square root of 5 will stay square root of 5. And the square root of 9 will give us 3. So now we will add 7/3 to both sides. So now we will have x is equal to 7/3 plus or minus the square root of 5 over 3. Now if you notice here, both of these have the same denominator. So we can, in theory, we can combine this. So we could either leave the answer as this, or we could rewrite it as 7 plus or minus the square root of 5 all over 3. Either one of these would be acceptable. Now, we want to scroll on to the next page. And now we have example 3. It says the average debt A of T in thousands of dollars of an American age T years can be modeled by. Now, this is what we need to do with this here. It says find A of 19. So the first thing we need to do here is substitute in 19 for for T. So we will have A of 19 is equal to a negative 0.002 times 19 minus 27 squared plus 16.660. Now, in this parenthesis, we will have here 19 minus 27. We know that that will give us a negative 8, and that's squared plus 16.660. Now, when we put all of this in our calculator, that will give us the approximate value of 16.532, and this is thousands, because everything is in thousands. Now, what this means is we will put that the average 19-year-old in the U.S. has about $16,532 in debt. So that is what this means. Now, we go down here to B. It said find T when A of T is 10 by hand using the square root method. What does it mean in this situation? Okay, so now we go here to, we will make A of T is 10. So we will add 10 is equal to the equation that we had, which was a negative 0.002 times T minus 27 parentheses squared plus 16.660. Now we want to solve this by hand. So what we would do is this here. We would subtract 16.660 from both sides. And this would give us a negative 6.660 is equal to a negative 0.002 times T minus 27 squared. Now we would divide each side by the negative 0.002. Now, when we divide each side here, this would give us 3,330, and that would equal to T minus 27 in parentheses squared. Now, we need to take the square root of both sides to get rid of the square here. So now the square root of 3,330, we know this would end up giving us a positive or negative. So this would give us T minus 27 is equal to positive or negative square root of 3,330. Now, we would have to add 27 on both sides. So now when we add 27 on both sides, that'll give us 27 plus or minus the square root of 3,330. And that will equal to T. Now, what we have to do is we will have to go off to the side, and I'm just going to do it here. We'll go off to the side and have T is equal to 27 plus the square root of 3,330. And then we will have T is equal to 27 minus the square root of 3,330. Now, when we put this in our calculator and round to 2 decimal places, this will give us approximately $84 or 84.71. And this will give us approximately a negative 57.71. Now, what happens is this here. We have our two answers, but we know the problem goes is this here. When we're dealing with money and how much debt a person have, you cannot have negative debt, so this is useless. So now, we will have 84.71. Now, what this states is this here, that at age 84.71 in the U.S., you have $10,000 in debt. So that's what that means. Now we come down here. It says, what is the vertex of the model? The vertex is 2716.660. What does it mean in this situation? Americans are in the most debt around age 27 with $1,666. I took the liberty of adding this in.